Celtics Beat is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
Hey everybody, welcome in. It is a new edition of Celtics Beat. Great to be with you. Adam Kaufman, Evan Valenti. We're always here. Our special guest today, Steve Bulpett from Heavy.com. Steve, welcome. It's good to see you again. Been a bit.
Is Valenti throwing up gang signs over here?
He's
Shadowboxing.
always like whatever. I don't know. We're gonna have a secret Zoom handshake or something like that. That won't be a secret because everybody will see it, obviously. But we should. Yeah, I mean, we haven't been in person in years. There was the little stopgap for an afternoon last year, but other than that, we haven't been in person in years. So maybe we can come up with something to make the people happy. I think something that'll make everyone happy, Steve, is that basketball is right around the corner. Not that it ever really went away between the Celtics' very long season playing all basically through June, onward to a championship and the parade and the celebration that followed and everything like that. Then you have Summer League and obviously the Olympics, which was a lot of fun, lots to talk about as it related to the Celtics. And I know you've written about
the Olympics, otherwise known as Jayson Tatum's vacation.
Yes, exactly. And you wrote about that a couple weeks back on Heavy, and Jared Weiss over at The Athletic and New York Times wrote something this week talking with Tatum about sort of his reflections of that time. I would certainly recommend people go out, read both pieces. But, September is basically here at this point, and we're, rapidly approaching training camp and obviously preseason games. And then late October, just before Halloween, boom, season's going to be underway, and here we go again. So one thing that I want to start with, and we can get back to sort of the Tatum stuff and Olympics and all of that. There's been a lot of conversation on this show and elsewhere pertaining to Jaylen Brown's feud with Nike and the Olympic Committee, and obviously he wins the multiple MVPs in the playoffs, but isn't first team or even second team or third team All NBA. Tatum with the benchings and just a lot, not winning MVP, either conference finals or NBA finals. A lot of, boy, these guys are motivated, and how are they going to respond? One thing we haven't spent a lot of time on here on this program just yet, and I think a lot of people have been so sort of preoccupied with all of those other stories that they haven't fully gotten here yet, but I think it's a good storyline going into the year, and it's going to be a talking point early in the season, depending on how Boston starts, is for years it's been, are the Celtics good enough? Do they have the right makeup? How do they get over the hump? All of these things. Now that they've won, though, it's going to be, how does Boston handle being the hunted and being that team that everyone is trying to catch and knock off? And they've re-signed everyone, and they've got this window now if new ownership, whenever that comes down the line, doesn't sell off pieces. There's a real potential here for banner 19, 20, 21. Who knows? If Celtics fans are out there dreaming big. How do you think that this team, given some of the offseason drama, does respond to being the hunted in the new year?
I think, look, they've been a really good team for a long time, and this year, for several reasons, it was just a matter that they didn't screw it up. I mean, you go back to the conference finals against Cleveland. Was that 18?
Tatum's first year, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that team was, first of all, get Game 7 on your home floor. And the Warriors were very concerned about the Celtics that year because the Celtics were able to switch things. Trust me when I tell you this here, they were rooting hard for the Cavaliers in that Game 7. And so the Celtics have been good enough for a long time. And I think they've been hunted for a long time. But it was just a matter of getting in their own way. The Warriors, part of them was surprised they were able to do what they did to the Celtics in the finals a couple of years ago. They just kind of bullied them in a lot of ways. They put a lot of pressure on Tatum and got physical, and things happened. So they've been in this situation before. I think the fact that they've got the confidence that, hey, we didn't screw it up. We didn't let the ball dribble through our legs. They've got that. And they're going to have to deal with expectation And I think that's going to be good because they're going to be, you know, they're not going to be able to walk in and think, well, we're just another game. They're going to be the team that is going to be challenged, and how do they respond to a challenge? And they've got enough guys, I think, that respond well to challenges. We'll see.
Yeah, I agree with that. And having a group of guys that have been through a lot of things together, now that with Drew and Kristaps coming in as new pieces, that's kind of a little different. And I'll get to that in a second. But you have a lot of continuity on this team. One of the things that I've bragged about for years about this particular core is it's been, pretty much the same, minus a piece or two here and there. So they've been able to grow and learn together. And then you added Drew Holiday, who since the playoffs have started, I probably haven't stopped talking about, just because of the maturity level and how good he is on both ends. I just didn't fully understand Drew Holiday experience until watching him this year, understanding exactly everything he does on the floor. It just feels like there's a different level of professionalism now with these guys. I mean, you hear Tatum talk about it in that piece that Adam just talked about, in terms of, yeah, we already, we got fit for our rings, and we talked about, ring night's going to be kind of different, but that second game, we need to be ready to rock because, as you said, we're going to be the hunted now. And it feels like, to me, Steve, one of my favorite parts about this group has been able to watch them grow. And from when you're standing, obviously, going into this season, it feels to me like there's a different level of maturity with these guys. Do you concur with that?
Yeah, I think, well, look, I think I wrote weeks ago that it was a lot of weeks ago now, I guess it's been a while. Here's the question. Did Tatum and Brown, what came first? Did they start trusting their teammates, or did their teammates or did they get better teammates? And the answer I came up with was you have a 7-second delay here, who the expletive deleted cares, but because that's the thing. And you mentioned Drew Holiday, and I wrote a story this year because I just kept coming back to this one thing. How the hell has he played for like all these different teams? I mean, the fact that he's been dealt around the league, to me, is the clear sign, the clear, bright, flashing sign that the NBA needs to start drug testing its front offices. I don't get how, I mean, you get a guy like him, you say, okay, you're not going anywhere. Take all the money you want. You're not going anywhere, because he's so much more than just what numbers he puts up. You look at when they made the initial trade last summer to get Porzingis. My questions were then, and we might have even talked about it here. Tell me how healthy Porzingis is going to be, and tell me how the Celtics are going to do defensively and just kind of basketball soul-wise without Marcus Smart.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get the opportunity to make the trade for Drew Holiday, and it's like, problem solved.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly the Bucks, are in need of a dope slap. I mean, how do you make that move? First of all, making that move, knowing what it's going to cost you defensively when you trade, you're going to get a help offensively, sure, perhaps with Dame Lillard, but it's going to cost you defensively, because they're going to, when you get to, if they got deeper into the playoffs, you would just watch teams target Lillard, and it wouldn't have been pretty. But to not think about, okay, we're trading Drew Holiday to the Portland Trailblazers, who are trying to play for the future, who really don't need a Drew Holiday right now. What are they going to do with him? Not thinking the 2 moves ahead to what's going to happen with him, and realizing that he would be a perfect person to come to the Celtics. If you're the Bucks and you realize, if you'd have thought about it, you couldn't make that trade for Lillard with the possibility or with the eventuality, if you'd have known he's going to come to Boston.
But
you lost in that deal.
2020, though, do you think there's regret on the part of the Bucks making that series of moves? Because I look at it and say, they felt anyway. I don't know if this is true, but they felt they had to make that move for Lillard, independent of obviously it ultimately costing them Holiday, and he goes to Boston, wins a championship, all of that. They had to make the move for Lillard because it was one of those pieces or dominoes of, we need to do whatever it is to keep Giannis happy and keep him here. We can't risk him wanting to leave, asking for a trade or waiting out his contract and leaving or whatever it is. Like, we need to bring in, if he's 1A, we got to bring in another team's 1. We got to bring in a 1B, and we'll see what it looks like. And hopefully we figure it out. And obviously it didn't look great last year under Doc and company, but it still felt like sort of a necessary evil for the greater good of Milwaukee and Giannis. But I don't know. Am I wrong about that? You talk to more execs around the league than I do, obviously.
Let's put it on the board here. Let's do the math. Okay. Before the trade, you look at the Bucks and the Celtics and say, how competitive are these two teams? If you're the Bucks, what are your chances against the Celtics of these two? And particularly after the trade for Porzingis, with the Celtics not having Marcus Smart. Okay. And you'd be looking at a backcourt, probably you'd be moving Jaylen Brown back to the 2 spot, or to that basic defensive position anyway. How are you basically against the Celtics then? You say, okay, we match up pretty well here. We've been competitive with them before, and this is going to be an interesting fight, particularly now they don't have Marcus Smart to get in our way and to, take charges and all that kind of thing. Now reshuffle and say, we're the Bucks with Dame Lillard, but without Drew Holiday, against the Celtics with Drew Holiday. And you can't be excited about that matchup if you're the Bucks. So, I mean, just, they say, okay, we're going to give you a math problem. Now show your work. If you did that on the board and worked it out, it's like, oh no, we can't do that. And you present that to Giannis, and it's like, dude, it's not going to work here. The Bucks, they had to, they had to hope some guys were healthy, and they've got guys that are, I think, sneaky good that people don't talk about a whole lot. But Lopez is like a really good player for them. Having that kind of a 5 that can stretch, and he's a strong guy. He'll get boards and all that stuff. But, thinking you're going to bring in that kind of offense with Lillard, first of all, he's got to be able to find a way to be complementary with Giannis, which is its own set of difficulties, guys getting comfortable with each other, etc. Even if they want to, and they both look like they did, there wasn't any like, no, I'm the guy. No, I'm the guy. They wanted to, but it was still going to be difficult. And then you look at it and say, okay, now how bad have we hurt ourselves defensively? And that puts even more pressure on your offense to, we got to score like every possession here. Yeah. You kind of be like the Colorado football team. You better score every time you have the football, right? Because you're going to be giving it up.
I heard that last night, just as an aside, I heard that last night from Shedeur, and I laughed. I was like, that's not a great mentality to have, that we got to score.
He said that last night?
He said it at halftime. He said that. He said, we have to score. He said to the reporter, we have to score at every possession to win this game. And I was like, oh my God, just throw your whole defense under the bus. Felt like an Ime quote almost, throwing everybody under the bus and then run everybody over with it. That's well used. It shows that he's got a pretty strong grasp of it. He's a man of intellect. Yeah. For the people that are listening and watching, we had a very brief pre-game conversation about the Colorado game versus North Dakota State on a Thursday night. So that's why I'm just laughing uncontrollably.
Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Over 5 million active members. It's a big number, and for good reason. Prize Picks, it's the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's you against the numbers. That's it. All you do, you pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. You watch the winnings just simply roll in.
Prize Picks is getting you ready for this football season with a slam dunk offer for the entire month of September, folks. Caleb Williams, Bears quarterback, #1 pick. All he's got to do is notch 1 passing yard in any game the entire month of September. Just one, Kaufman. Just one. That's it. Just
Any
1
game
yard.
in September, 1 passing yard.
Use that pick with any other combination of stat projections to start building your bank account today.
All right, well, Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy. So your lineups, they stay in play even if one of your players does get injured. If your player leaves in the first half, doesn't return, Prize Picks, well, they keep your picks still alive, which is a wonderful thing, obviously. Download the Prize Picks apps today. Use code CLNS. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. Get $50 instantly when you play just $5. Code CLNS on Prize Picks. Again, get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to receive to win to receive the $50 bonus. You just get it by playing that $5. I mean, truly, find me a better deal. I'm not sure you can. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game.
But I do want to get back to the Celtics because I think it's funny that, you know, you talk about that trade and not thinking 2 steps ahead. And I clearly the Bucks from the minute they traded didn't even consider the fact that the Celtics would get Drew Holiday in a trade. They didn't know that Brad Stevens had been asking, apparently, according to Brad, Danny Ainge for Drew Holiday for years. Can you corroborate that? Do you know anything else behind that? Because you have a little bit more insight to the inner workings of Danny's front office, because Brad seemed like pretty adamant. He goes, I've been asking Danny for years how we would get a hold of Drew Holiday, and now we finally brought him here.
Yeah, I've been a Marcus Smart guy for a long time, and just in terms of appreciating what he does, he'll throw up a bad 3 and people will just, go crazy. But if you look at the overall body of his work, like some guys, are even when they're doing good things, it's not going to be poetic. It's not going to look great. And that's Marcus. But if I'm coaching and, the biggest thing you want, especially out of your point guard, is some sense of certainty. And Marcus, to put it mildly, could be just a tad mercurial. So that had to be a little bit interesting. Yeah, I'd say in terms of things that caused Brad Stevens to reach for the digitalis, Marcus would be like chief among them. Like, okay, so yeah, I can see him wanting a Drew Holiday very badly. Hey, he wanted Mike Conley too for a long time. There's a few guys that they had their eyes on, and I think Holiday's one of them. But why? I don't understand why everybody wouldn't want, I can understand why Portland made the trade and moved Drew Holiday. Look, they wanted Robb Williams, who, if he can stay healthy, and look, these have been traumatic injuries. If he can be something, so things you can get over. If he comes back healthy, that's a great trade for Portland. You've got a guy that's a game changer under a good contract. Thank you very much. But everybody else, how do you let a Drew Holiday out from your grasp? How are you, as basketball people, not see what he does for you, for your team? Again, beyond the numbers. It's just, having that kind of a presence. Look, Al Horford's another one. He does great stuff. You can look at the numbers. That's good stuff there. But having someone in your dressing room that's playing a major role in your team that isn't saying, hey, give me this, give me that, but is playing a role. I mean, that's huge. We talked about, in the pregame thing, we were talking about, mentioned the Spurs. Personality and all these different things and how the good players act is huge. If Tim Duncan doesn't let Greg Popovich yell at him, then tell me where the Spurs and Greg Popovich are. Pop has said, he's back coaching Division III, right? I mean,
Brady Belichick, right? I mean, that's what people have said about that tandem for years too.
When Tim Duncan allows Popovich to yell at him and responds properly and if you're any other player on that team, it's like, damn, our best player can get yelled at, it becomes acceptable. It's not a thing where guys are, damn, this coach doesn't, no, you got to go along with the program. So those kind of things, and those kind of relationships. I know we're getting kind of far afield here, but there's so much to appreciate with guys beyond just what you see on the floor. It's the mentality that they bring to their game that is huge. Having a guy like Derek White, who you had to actually goad into being a little bit more selfish. Dude, take the shots, you know, that's huge. And it alters a team's chemical makeup. And it's, you know, without those two guys being not only their physical talents, talking about White and Holiday, beyond their physical talents, just the way they approach the game, the way they play hard, and the way they play intelligently. Are the Celtics nearly as good a team as we saw this year? I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, it's not just their numbers, it's their approach, and throwing Horford for three. And even Porzingis, you know, it's when they made the trade for Porzingis, everyone around Boston's like, this guy is a stiff. He's, you know, always hurt. It's like, no, you can look at everybody in context, right? If Kristaps Porzingis is like your first or second best player, that's a whole lot of eggs to put in his basket, and that basket can get dropped pretty easily. But if he's like your third or fourth or whatever, you know, in that kind of context, that's huge.
Well, I think what you're talking about too, with all of those guys that you just mentioned, they're all, you know, largely at kind of different moments, phases, stages, what have you, of their careers. They do fit under a similar umbrella, right? I mean, you know, I'll take Porzingis out of it for a moment, but the other three in particular, Holiday, White, and Horford, they're just basketball players. Like these guys just, they're good, solid, seemingly could fit anywhere and thrive in a role kind of guys. And the only reason I say seemingly there is because I believe that of Holiday, I believe that of White. I did believe it of Horford until we saw how horribly he was misused with Philadelphia. So I'm not entirely sure I can keep him in that category. I'd like to, but these are, you know, it's just a trio of guys that there is, to your point, and utter almost obscene selflessness among the three, to where, you know, Holiday's at a stage where he's now won multiple championships. He's won a gold medal. He's, you know, he's been a scorer. He's never been a one per se, but he's been a scorer. He's had that I'm the guy sort of stage of his career. Now he's in the twilight years. Horford as well. Not that he was ever a like this overwhelming all-star, but for Atlanta, he was, you know, kind of
he was the prize free agent when the Celtics got him.
He and at that point in time was the biggest name free agent in terms of where he was at the stage of his career, contract, all of it, that the Celtics had ever signed. I mean, that was a big deal for anyone that is, you know, either doesn't remember or is too young to remember. I mean, that was huge when Al Horford joined Boston, and obviously set things in motion to where, you know, he would be replaced on that list by Gordon Hayward and, you know, almost Kevin Durant and some of these other guys along the way. But I just think there's a really special, unique fit among these guys here, to where, you know, yeah, I mean, they could work elsewhere, and they have worked elsewhere, but it just works that much better together. There, again, the selflessness, but also the fact that there's a level of buy-in or what have you, that, you know, when they know, when everybody knows, Tatum and Brown are our 1A, 1B on whatever the given night. It may be interchangeable. And every once in a while, if somebody's out, Holiday, you're going to have your night. White, you're going to have your night. Once in a blue moon, Horford, you know, Porzingis, certainly you know, people I may have already forgotten how instrumental he was in that you know, game that he returned in the playoffs after that long layoff. And I mean, just such a tone setter, obviously, in that series. So they have this collection of guys that I think sometimes we're guilty of overlooking, kind of how masterfully Brad and Zarin and Austin and so many others put this group together.
Brad said all along that he was looking for guys that would work well with Tatum and Brown, right? To complement them. Like, I'm sure you guys do too. I look at the little stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you had Jaylen Brown coming back this year as the highest paid player in history or whatever. huge bag, okay, and he's in his head, partly it's there thinking, I've got to prove I deserve this, which in some ways takes you away from, the team thing. But, hey, look, if he's hell bent on that and he's working his butt off and he's going to be a better player because he's worked hard, then let him, okay? How can we complement where his head's at? So I look at that situation and tell me how much, I'm not saying it was a huge thing, but tell me how much the relationship between Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis, what kind of an effect that had on this team. You know what I mean? Like their relationship, playing with each other, like, trying to complement, kind of taking Jaylen and like say, look, hey, here's your buddy. This is a buddy comedy, and here we go. Those kind of things work. And the other part that gets left out, because I fully believe that Tatum should have shared the Finals MVP with Jaylen Brown. I think I wrote that it should have been 4-4 in voting. They should have either split the last vote or given it to the leprechaun logo at center court, whatever. They should have found a way to split that award, because although his numbers weren't what people thought they should be, Jayson Tatum, seeing the double teams, making the pass out of it, not just the assist, which were, pretty impressive, but the pass to the person who makes the assist, that was huge stuff. And he wasn't doing that before. And that was a major key to this team being as unguardable as it was in most situations. So, and I know I wrote a story about this. It drove me nuts to see these former NBA players on TV saying that Jayson Tatum has to assert himself. He's got to be the alpha tonight. He's got to score 30 points. And it's like, no, he doesn't. How dumb are you guys? Are you just, trying to give a hot take to get your paycheck? That's crazy. He has to do the right thing in each situation. And if it's seeing the double team coming, among the things that really defined Tim Duncan's greatness, to bring him back into the picture, was not just that he made the pass out of the double team, but he made the pass that killed you out of the double team. So, I mean, you saw a lot more of that from Tatum this year. This whole thing of that's the kind of mentality that kills basketball teams. If he comes in thinking, I've got to score 35, you're screwed. It's, again, maybe it's just guys realizing they have to say something boldly to, because that's the way the medium works, TV, those shows. And if so, hey, great, keep food on the table. But it's like, in a basketball sense, no way. That's ridiculous.
I want to stick with that for a second, just because Tatum, I did a whole podcast with Jeff about this, about how he's been a lightning rod for pretty much just NBA discussion this whole year, and how frustrating it's become for guys who are like trying to watch the game and tell everybody what's actually happening versus, Tatum scoring 30 a game. And obviously the Olympics had a lot to do with that. You wrote a piece on it. You had quotes from, coaches and executives about, what's going on with Team USA. And you had a great bit about how it's Steve Kerr's team. They asked him to coach this team, so he's going to coach it his way, et cetera, et cetera. I want to ask it this way, because he, again, had that little conversation with Jared Weiss yesterday. How do you think Jayson Tatum has handled all the noise that surrounded him this summer, between, not being alpha enough and not playing versus Serbia and playing sparingly? How do you think he's handled everything? Because it seems to me like he's entering this new phase of NBA superstardom where like it or not, you're going to be talked about all the time, in bad ways, in good ways, in sideways, and everything. How do you think he's handling it so far as a 26-year-old?
I think well enough. I think his best response after they get their jewelry, when that kind of question gets asked, his response should be, I make sure I hold up the right finger here. You know, check out this little bling here. Here's my response. You know, look, and I know I've said this a billion times. If you go back and look, there wasn't a day in Bill Russell's life that Wilt Chamberlain wasn't a better individual basketball talent, better basketball decathlete. But Bill Russell understood the game in a way that Wilt never fully grasped. So on one hand, you have Wilt Chamberlain being a colossus who would be an uber star today. You know, enough of this crap. JJ Redick and Gilbert Arenas and whomever else wants to
Anthony
talk
Edwards.
about. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, Anthony, my God, dude, you're great. It's like, you know, with the old line, I'd rather keep my mouth shut and have people think I'm an idiot than open it and remove all doubt. I've dealt with that in my life. So, yeah. So Wilt is the colossus, and Bill Russell is the greatest winner in the history of team sports. There's an object to the game. So, you know, if you're Jayson Tatum, you know, say all you want about me. Here's what, you know, there's some ceiling laundry there that I contributed to, and we're going to try to stitch some more of it. You know, that would be the response, and laugh at it, because it's especially with social media, right? This is hot take society, you know, like, you know, you can do stuff now that I can finish this here and go on Twitter X, whatever Elon wants to call it today, and say something ridiculously stupid. Not that I don't regularly anyway, but even more so. And, you know, and people are going to respond. It's just crazy. But that's the thing. It doesn't mean, you know, what matters is what happens in the games and how you contribute to it and how good a teammate you are. You know, yeah, I've spoken to like high school teams and stuff, and I went back to my school when I go back and teach at Dayton. And one year I talked to the basketball team, and I said, look, you know, you'll win when you play for each other. You know, when your overriding feeling is, I don't want to let the guy next to me down, and he doesn't want to let me down. If you get to that situation, you work harder on the court, in practice, in the weight room, in the classroom even. You'll start supporting each other, and that's how teams win. And that's how this Celtics team won, because they weren't just great individually, but they were great in a complementary sense. The corner threes that Drew Holiday was hitting that were daggers, right? I mean, there weren't a ton of them, but when they came, they were a pretty sure bet, and they were daggers. That came because the team had spaced properly, because it had moved the ball well enough to get the defense rotating and going side to side, and the ball had gotten to him with enough space to have a clean shot. You know, the other example I always use when I'm talking to guys is one guy has the ball, he drives to the basket. His teammate seals off a defender, and the guy goes in for a layup. Okay. The guy that scored, he gets the 2 points. The guy that passed to him gets the assist. But who really scored the bucket here? The guy who did the seal gets no stat at all. But when teams, the guys on the bench, when teams celebrate that kind of stuff, that's when you win. That's what wins games.
Guys, before we wrap here, though, I do want to make sure that we mention there was some news pertaining to the Boston Celtics this week. A camp invite anyway. We'll see if he sticks around. Lonnie Walker, who has been with the Nets, Lakers, spent a little time with Spurs when Derek White was there as well. Intriguing move. Now, obviously, we're talking about if he even makes the team an end of the bench guy who could see some minutes. I mean, he saw, granted, for a very bad Brooklyn Nets team, 17 minutes a game, something like that, and scored about 10 points. He's an excellent three-point shooter, really strong defender, tremendous athlete, all of it. I think he's a very natural fit with this team and Joe Mazzulla's crew, if obviously he does make the club, and roster spots are a little thin, hard to come by. I mean, they've only lost a couple of guys, Brissett and Spee. Everybody else from last year is back, plus obviously Shireman. We'll see what happens with what is it, Walton, the second rounder that you love? Watson. So yeah, this is how much I care about him. But this team, is I think Lonnie Walker could be a good fit for what they're looking to do, and I'm talking regular season when I say that, and knowing that there's just going to be sort of a depth climb, if you will, in that Porzingis is going to miss half the year. I mean, Horford's going to be sitting back-to-backs and have minutes limited and all of that. There's going to be a trickle down. I know I just talked about bigs, but there's going to be a trickle down in terms of overall minutes that exist on this team. I think somebody like Walker would come in and be a good fit. I don't know how you guys feel about him and chances of even making the team to begin with, but what you think he brings if in fact, Steve, he is here.
Well, you talk about the guys that are going to be missing time and Horford, how they're going to play with him. I think basically what we're looking at this year is this is going to be the, Neemias Queta's campaign for Springfield. This is going to be it this year. This is his chance to make the Hall of Fame. The Lonnie Walker signing is like one of those perfect risk reward things, great potential reward, no risk. But realize this, if Lonnie Walker were better, more interested defensively, he wouldn't be available to the Celtics for an Exhibit 10 contract. So he's got to alter his thinking there and buy in and all those fun things. But yeah, he's there, as a pretty nice insurance policy. If one of the wings gets hurt, if there's some kind of injury there and he's around, he's in the fold, he's ready to go. So I think it's a no-brainer move. I'm kind of surprised, and I'm not sure what other options were available to him, but I'm kind of surprised that he would take an Exhibit 10 from the Celtics.
Yeah, I was a little surprised, and I was building towards this if we ever got to it. I was like, we got to the, how did the rest of the league let the Celtics trade for Drew Holiday? Felt kind of similar here in a way of how is there not another team around the NBA that needs a depth piece? Not looking at Lonnie Walker and say, hey, let's give this guy a shot. Because I went back after the signing, I went back and watched that fourth quarter he had against Golden State a few years ago where he scored 15. And LeBron after the game goes, "We don't win this game without Lonnie Walker." It was a fun little moment to get caught up in. But it's one of those things. I'm like, how is Boston coming away with Lonnie Walker here? I don't really get how everybody else in a league that's, again, we talk about this, Kaufman. We've been talking about this for years. In a league that's prioritizes wing depth and having so many guys that you can throw out there on the wing. How Lonnie Walker's sitting around, I really don't understand. Now, yes, I know he has his deficiencies in certain places, but I was like, I saw with the contract, I'm like, what is going on here? I have a hot take though, Steve. I have a hard time believing he's going to play in Maine. I just don't. I don't see how he doesn't. I mean, I know there are certain contractual things they might have to work around, but he's for your 9th, 10th guy on your bench. That's an extreme luxury.
Yeah, I mean, he's a pro.
I looked at it the same way. When I saw that, and you could wind up in Maine. It's like, I don't think so, but I'm wrong occasionally. Like only like 10 times today, and it's what, 2 o'clock. Yeah. So, but I don't see it either. Again, he could wind up being there. Hey, look, there's guys in Maine. I mean, JD Davis and these guys, he looked, better. There's just no room at the inn with the varsity right now. And it's a difficult spot, but they were pretty well fortunate injury wise last year. And even to the extent that the Porzingis injury didn't hurt them badly. Because I mean, Porzingis was an incredible complement to that offense. My God, the threes he was able to hit, stretch, and not just the threes and the points you got off them directly, but that kind of floor spacing, like, again, it all works in harmony and in tandem. And, what does him hitting a couple of threes do for everybody else getting to the basket? Kristaps Porzingis hitting a 3-pointer out by the arc there, or obviously beyond it. What does that do for Drew Holiday in the dunker spot along the baseline, creeping in? I mean, and then zipping out to the corner if someone else drives. All those things work together, and it's I think Lonnie Walker is more likely to wind up on another roster than on Maine's.
Well, fellas, like I said, season is approaching. I don't. There are some of these shows that, like, it's good to have these overall big picture conversations, obviously, and but like there's also there's an anxiousness of like, all right, well, now we're talking about how motivated these guys going to be, and being the hunted, and roster fits, and selflessness, and all these different things. It's like, let's get there already. I'm ready to get there. I'm ready to start to hear from these guys, doing their media avails, giving us the whole media day, everybody's in the best shape of their live stuff. I'm ready for it. It's almost September, Steve. I mean, you got to be. I'm sure you don't mind the break to whatever you're allowing yourself to take a break, but I'm sure you're eager to get back over there into the locker rooms too.
I think I'm eager more for like getting to like middle of December when things are like have shaken out.
Yeah,
you get to
a little
see
more established.
And like, because I mean, the biggest thing that's as just a person following sports in the last several weeks has been watching people dissect the Patriots preseason games. When they're not showing anybody anything else,
right?
No one's showing them anything. So how are we making huge judgments based on the playing field in a preseason game, which is nothing or very little to do with what you're going to see during the regular season? It's like, get to games that mean something, because it's almost a different. Regular season football is a different sport than preseason football.
No, I mean, the collective we has decided that the Patriots offensive line is arguably the worst in history, and we've seen it for half of a quarter of one game.
Yeah, but they presented pretty good evidence in that.
Yeah, sometimes people are right.
Like, what's going to happen when it's not preseason and the biggest goal, your best players, their biggest goal in the preseason games is what? Don't get hurt.
Don't get hurt.
Okay. And then when it gets to regular season, their biggest goal is, let's hurt someone else, and it's a different gig. So again, I bring it back to basketball, which I think is why we came here. I want to get to the middle of December and see how teams are shaking out, and what groups look like now they're playing. I mean, I'm hugely interested to see Philadelphia, but watching them, certainly not in preseason, but even in the first few weeks of the regular season, I think would be foolish to judge what they do then, because it's going to take a while to see how that shakes out. Paul George and Tyrese and Embiid and all that. So give me not just regular season, but give me a little while into it.
Check Steve out on Twitter at Steve B. Hoop. You can, of course, find Steve Bulpett's work on heavy.com. If you're looking for a direct link, it is heavy.com/author/Stephen Bulpett. That is Stephen with a PH for anyone that is out there, not just doing a Steve Bulpett heavy Google search. If you want the direct link, that's what it is. Steve, we always enjoy when you hop on with us, man. We'll keep an eye out for future articles, obviously.
Guys, be well.
For Steve, for Evan Valenti, I'm Adam Kaufman. Rate, review, most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Next time we talk to you, folks, it's not just the footballs here and it's, the fall. September. Basketball's right around the corner.